All right, so we are talking about making digital art with that graffiti neon spray paint. And we're also gonna I'm gonna show you guys how to do it on paper, but I wanna show you how to do it on this graffiti website first because it's a little bit easier for y'all to see what I'm doing, and I want you guys to see different ways to make stuff and how to utilize these websites. So I clicked on spray can. I'm gonna use the smallest one. And I'm gonna use black first. And I'm just gonna do something really simple to show you guys so you guys aren't watching me do the same thing over and over again. But I'm just gonna spray paint black. And I'm doing something very simple, which is just gonna be a heart. And you guys can do whatever you choose to do. I'm gonna keep that, or no, I'm gonna use the medium size, and I'm gonna pick what color I wanna use. So I'm gonna use yellow. And so I'm doing the black to give me kind of an outline, but it's actually gonna be my shadow. So I'm gonna move a little bit off center. So a little bit up and to the left for my outside version. So we're kind of covering up that black line that we made, but you can kind of see it in the back a little bit popping out, so it looks like the neon light is creating a shadow. And then I'm going to come in and do the white, because this is what's going to be in the middle and what's going to kind of make it stand out. And this is just very basic of what my example is, and you can see I only have 3 different shades. So I have yellow, white, and black. And if we had other colors on here, if there was a lighter yellow and a darker yellow, we could add that to give it more dimension, to make it 3-dimensional. But this very simply is the basic version of this. And I am gonna save my picture by clicking the FN button and the print screen button like I had showed you guys before. Oh wait, is that what no. New, and I'm just gonna save just my picture. And then you can click on this to save it, and it'll probably make a weird name for it, like capture. You can change it to whatever you want, heart, and I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna make it a JPEG, which is up to you. And then I'm gonna save it, and that's all I need to do for that. But I want you guys to do something a little more in depth than that. This, I'm gonna show you guys how to do it a couple of different ways on paper as well, using some different materials. So this one is my watercolor. This one is all crayon, and this one, I didn't finish coloring in the outside yet, but this is crayon and marker, both. So this is mixed media. This also has crayon in it, so that's also mixed media. So as you can kind of see here, when you do a really small one, it's kind of hard to make it look realistic. It looks a little bit better when you do a big one. So I'm just gonna make like some short lines to kind of show you guys what I'm doing. So for this one, I started out doing my white crayon is the only crayon I used on this one. And then for the watercolor, when you use watercolor, it will not touch the crayon because of the wax in it. It creates a resist. And then for this one, I did the same thing where I started on the white. And this one, I actually did not use any white. I just left that space there, but I'll show you guys how I did that. So I'm gonna do a simple crayon line first. So I'm just gonna do a line with my white. If you guys want to use like a regular pencil to kind of give you a guide, you can probably barely see that, but that's what you want. Use a pencil so you know what you're doing, and then go white on top of it. And then with the crayons, you can, excuse me, kind of use 2 different crayons if you have a whole bunch of shades, but I want to show you how to do it with only 1 crayon. So I'm going to use this blue color. And I know you guys can barely see the white, but when you do it on your paper, you should be able to see it. So I'm going to go from white to my lightest shade of blue. So I'm just going to go very lightly on both sides. Very lightly. And then on the next part right outside of that, I'm pressing pretty hard and I'm gonna go dark. And then you can also choose to use black to cast a shadow, or you can color out the whole back of it to make it really dark so it looks like it's dark outside on a dark wall. And yours, this is just kind of a play paper. You can use a play paper and do a bunch of different experiments on it and then later create like a nice finished piece, but it's up to you guys what you do. I would like, if you do a nice finished piece, to have some sort of background, to draw some sort of wall, pretend that it's a sign on a wall outside or something. But so this is my very simple crayon line, and you do that however you want. So for when I did the heart, like I did the exact same thing, but I drew the whole heart in white, and then I did the whole heart in my light blue. You can kind of go back in and make that white line. You want the white line to be pretty thin, but you still want to see it. So you can still see it, but you can see my shades. And you can do a lot more. You can make a big, thick one if you want. So I'm gonna go just real quick, like super light, and then I'm gonna go darker and press. The harder you press, the darker it's gonna get. So I can clearly see like 1, 2, 3, 4-ish, 4 or 5 like different shades of blue with just this one crayon. You can go even lighter probably. And then a white, which I know you can't really see, and then a black. So you can get a pretty good variety with just using crayons. And I quite like using crayons for this. But you can also use colored pencils to do the same thing. You should have a white colored pencil and a white crayon. Even if you didn't get supplies from me, most of the time they do come with a white. But I'm gonna show you how to do it without using a white. So that's how I did this one. I didn't use a white at all. I just kind of left it blank in the middle. So I can kind of do the same thing if I'm using a white piece of paper. If you guys decide to use a dark or a black piece of paper, you will need to use the white. But I'm gonna use my green pencil and just start doing my light green, and then do it on both sides and just pretend that I have white space in the middle there. And then keep going. You can go a little bit darker. I'm gonna try to get 3 different shades of green on here. Right here, and then like a thin, dark outside line. So you can see that. And then I'm gonna add that shadow. So if you can imagine that this, because the neon signs are actually a rod filled with the light, so it does, even though it is light, the back of it will cast a shadow where there's not light on the back of it onto a wall. And if you're doing a shape, you can kind of do it wherever you want the shadow to be, but I kind of put it towards the bottom right, as though there's light coming from right here. You don't have to add a shadow if you don't want. I think it makes it look a little bit more 3D, but if you do it like this, you can also really tell that that you're making a light on a dark background, so the light is shining. I do want to show you the watercolor as well, just to show you guys how to use it, because I know not everyone has actually used it before. So I'm gonna pop these out, and these are not the same watercolors that I gave you guys. And if you don't have watercolors, of course, you don't have to do this. You don't have to do it the way that I'm doing. I'm just doing it to show you guys and make sure everyone knows how to use the different supplies that we have. So you do need like an actual cup of water for the watercolors rather than just cleaning your brush off. But I'm gonna take my crayon, and this part you'd have to use a crayon if you want to do what I'm doing. If you want to do it and just leave it blank, you can do that, but it won't work with like a pencil or a marker or anything. You have to have a crayon, and make sure you put it, see, I'm kind of making a mess with my crayon, getting a whole bunch of like wax on it because I'm pressing super hard. I'm gonna take my paintbrush, and I'm using just a little teeny tiny thing of water at my desk, and I'm gonna put water on my paintbrush before I put it in the paint. And then, so I'm gonna do the light color first. So I'm gonna use this purple, and I'm just gonna barely tap it in there. So you can see that I do have purple on my brush, but it's very, very light because it's mostly water. And I'm just gonna go right on here, and you see how the water kind of bubbles up and goes over to the side because it creates that resist. Even when you keep painting it, it just kind of spreads it out. It's not making it any darker. But to get a darker color with the watercolor, you can see the water that I already put in there a little bit. I'm going to brush it around, and I'm being very gentle. I'm making sure I'm not crushing my paintbrush, but I'm going back and forth because I'm gonna get more paint and less water when I do this basically. So it creates a darker color. So I'm gonna do my outline, my dark color. You can see how much darker it is. Like this. And this is wet, it is water, it is going to make your paper wet. So be careful when you're doing this, that you're not making a mess with your paper, not making it too wet. You can kind of dab it with a paper towel if you've got like too much on it. You don't want to rub it though because it'll rip, and you don't want to make your paper too wet because it will rip your paper. So if you do want to use mixed media, which is using different types of materials on the watercolor, kind of let it dry. Mine's not super wet because you saw I just dabbed it with a napkin, but if it is wet, you need to let it dry just a little bit before you start adding more stuff onto it. I am going to do that shadow again, and this one is a lot thicker, so I'm going to make a thick shadow of my line. And this is just examples. If you guys want to spend the class practicing and experimenting with different materials, I encourage you to do that versus trying to make a nice finished piece. But if you want to go in and do a nice finished piece, that is perfectly okay with me as well. As you can see, I can spend a lot of time experimenting with different stuff. You can definitely use a page in your sketchbook for this if you have a sketchbook to use, because you can look back on it. And since I have a play page here and this isn't a finished artwork, I'm gonna write on it. I'm gonna write value, because that is our important word of the day. That's what we're looking at, the different colors, the different shades and value that we're using. We are also using different types of lines as well, and that's another element of art. But value is the one I'm looking for in your artwork today. I want to see at least 3 different colors. So 3 different, not colors, 3 different shades. So if you're using green, I want to see light, medium, dark, and black and white also count. So white right here, and then I don't know what I do with my black. and then a black. And you guys can do this as well if it helps you to see the different shades. Just kind of create a little cheat, a little reference on there to practice how hard you're pressing. And if you forget that the white's there, you can just kind of, I do this sometimes where I kind of outline it and you can feel the crayon on there because it doesn't want me to press right there. So I can see, I know this is super small, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different greens that I have right there with pencil, with crayon on either side. And I will probably make a nice big finished piece for you guys to see what I'm looking for in a finished piece, but for today, do whatever you feel is necessary. Practice using this value for your neon drawings.